Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, March 14th, 2017. How's the snow where you are? We got trumped. We got told, I think we probably went to sleep thinking, oh my gosh, 8 to 10 inches at a minimum, maybe even more. They started to revise the snow totals down by the end of the evening, and by late night it was, well, geez whiz, I don't know, it sort of might rain instead, and I don't know. Well, I guess there's probably a couple, I don't know, maybe 2 inches of snow on the ground. Schools are closed nonetheless. The kids have the day off. No worries for them. It doesn't really affect what we're doing here either. I imagine there are higher snow totals out there somewhere, but it won't affect operations here as far as I can tell, except, of course, that we'll have additional noise in the background. It's a house, what can I tell you? So maybe we'll get some delicious cinnamon rolls or other type of treats served mid-show, and you can listen to me munch on them, and I'll send some to you. Contributors to the show, yeah, that's it. We can just send you cinnamon rolls as a premium. I don't know how they'll arrive in the mail, and it'll probably make the envelope a little bit greasy, but if you're willing to risk it, so am I. All right, let's see, this morning's news. Well, there's really only one thing dominating the headlines today, and that's healthcare, and how you're not going to have it anymore. So the CBO, Congressional Budget Office, has finally come out with their numbers. They were finally allowed to see the paperwork that goes along with this bill and give it their best shot at scoring it. And of course, it was immediately disputed by both the Trump administration and the Republicans in Congress. And as usual, there's plenty to the story. Let's see. First of all, I guess we'll start off with this one. This one was forwarded to me to everybody via Twitter, with the promise that it was a heck of a thread. So how can you resist, right? I mean, my God. Anyway, Brad Jaffe of NBC News tweeting this one begins this way. The headline that millions are picking up from their driveways this morning. Well, some of them, of course, the driveways are covered in snow, or people aren't going out and getting those newspapers. As a matter of fact, I see here Slade Somer tweeting out, this really turned into a healthy, low-fat or non-fat, healthy blizzard. Yeah, pretty much. Well, didn't amount to much around here anyway. I don't know. I did see that Philadelphia maybe was supposed to get a bit more than we did. Anyway, the headlines that people are picking up from their driveways, unless they're covered in snow across red states, blue states, and swing states. That would be all of our states. Illustrated here in a couple of front page newspaper photos, what have you, I guess screen grabs here. Arizona Republic. CBO says millions could lose coverage. How about that? Cash them outside. How about that? And now let's see. The San Diego Union Tribune says CBO, millions more uninsured. It seems like this is a theme. Let's see what the Los Angeles Times says. Uninsured would rise by 24 million, analysis says. Denver Post says millions to lose coverage, and it sounds like that's largely true. Interestingly, I did see that the White House somehow produced its own, I'll tell you something. The Washington Post, when I save things to Pocket via Twitter on my phone, things have changed. There's something about it. So maybe it's that I subscribed and it screwed it up. It doesn't put the headline in there. Anyway, the Washington Post also likewise has a similar headline, in case you cared what we here in the Beltway have to say. 24 million more uninsured by 2026 under the GOP plan, CBO says. Somewhere in here, in the morning review of things, here we go. Politico has this one, a White House analysis of Obamacare repeal sees even deeper insurance losses than the CBO. So I guess you got to question what exactly is going on at the White House I thought that they would have wanted the number to be lower. But hey, chaos. So maybe they wanted it even higher. The executive branch analysis forecast that 26 million people would lose coverage over the next decade versus 24 million CBO estimates. Slight difference, but usually you want to come in with a number that's even lower. Let's see. Paul Demko has this. Well, let's start there just because it's so interesting. You got a flavor for what people are reading around the country. There is some defense offered by congressional Republicans. I think their main defense is, well, sure, more people would lack coverage after a while, but that's because people would decide not to buy coverage because it sucks so bad and costs so much. Their explanation, of course, is, well, people wouldn't be forced any longer to buy insurance that they didn't want. Now, insurance that they don't want could mean anything. Insurance that's terrible, insurance that doesn't do anything for them, insurance that's too expensive no matter what it does for them, expensive insurance that also does nothing. We wouldn't be forced to buy those things, and you would be without insurance. Would you lose insurance? Well, I don't know. It's your decision to not buy it because it quadrupled in price. Did you really lose it? I mean, if that's what you're clinging to, I don't know. It's clearly going to be, this one's going to get tossed to the election. What can you do? The White House analysis, though, that sees even deeper insurance losses seems pretty interesting. Paul Demko, as I said, writing in Politico, a White House analysis of the GOP plan to repeal and replace Obamacare. Did you know they were going to do that? Shows even steeper coverage losses than the projections by the CBO, according to a document viewed by Politico on Monday. So in case you were wondering, what was Politico viewing yesterday? Now you know. The executive branch analysis forecast that 26 million people, who are the extra two, I'm not sure, would lose coverage over the next decade versus the 24 million in CBO estimates. The White House has made efforts to discredit the forecasts of the nonpartisan CBO. Not high enough, I guess, was the way they were doing that. White House officials late Monday night disputed that the document is an analysis of the bill's coverage effects. That's not what, I don't know what that is. That's how many hamburgers we're going to get for free at McDonald's under the new plan. I didn't say that. I don't know what, okay. He says, or someone at the White House said, it was an attempt by the Office of Management and Budget, the OMB, to predict what the CBO's scorekeepers would conclude about the GOP repeal plan. Okay, so that's not our prediction. That's our prediction of their prediction. I don't know that I've ever seen anybody make such a prediction, but okay. This is not an analysis of the bill in any way whatsoever, White House Communications Director Michael Dubke told Politico. That's our 20th White House communications person that we've identified so far. This is OMB trying to project what CBO's score will be using CBO's methodology. Interesting. Well, I guess they got it about right then. Even though, what the hell were you trying to do that for? The analysis found that under the American Health Care Act, as they're calling it, despite the fact that it doesn't offer anybody health care, the coverage losses would include 17 million for Medicaid, 6 million in the individual market, and 3 million in employer-based plans. That sounds like fun. How would you, after all this is all said and done, how would you like to think you were safe from all of this nonsense because you had an employer-provided plan, only to find out that you ended up losing that too? A total of 54 million individuals would be uninsured in 2026 under the GOP plan, according to this White House analysis, which it isn't, so stop saying so. That's nearly double the number projected under current law. That's quite a few, 54 million. The White House and congressional Republicans have aggressively sought to undercut the CBO projection by pointing to how far off its coverage estimates are for the Affordable Care Act, right? I did hear Sean Spicer trying that one on the press, and the press pretty much kind of sat there and absorbed it, although some of them may have had this thought in the back of their heads. The way it was being presented, of course, was, well, the CBO originally said that Affordable Care Act would insure, I think, what did they say, something like 24 million people, and that it instead insured considerably fewer. Perhaps, I think, if I recall the the way Spicer was putting it, was in the neighborhood of 16 to 17 million people eventually got insured by the Affordable Care Act. And I guess no discussion there of the fact that, well, yeah, the CBO scored a bill that hadn't yet been dissected by the courts. The bill called for Medicaid expansion in all 50 states and anticipated that that's what would happen. And instead, about half the states refused to expand Medicaid, and in those states, fewer people got covered as a result. And voila, about half the number of people that the CBO originally projected would get covered by the Affordable Care Act got covered by the Affordable Care Act. As written and as analyzed, it may very well have been correct. But no point in discussing any of that. Let's see. Oh, yes, here's the numbers. They, I guess, originally predicted that 21 million individuals would gain coverage through the exchange, but only about half that actually enrolled. We disagree strenuously with the report that was put out. HHS Secretary Tom Price told reporters about the CBO report after leaving a cabinet meeting with Trump at the White House. You got to note that. A cabinet meeting at the White House, not at a golf course. It's just not believable, is what we would suggest. While serving as House Budget Committee Chairman, Price had a role in appointing the current head of the CBO, who is a conservative economist. But he sucks now. The House bill was already under attack from both very conservative members who wanted it to go further. They wanted 90 million people without insurance, I guess, as well as moderates worried about coverage erosion, particularly in Medicaid. The CBO number made the task of passing it even more challenging. And everyone loves a challenge. So at least there's that, which is nice. We have that going for it. Okay. Plenty more news where that came from, of course. Let's see. Yes, yesterday I mentioned to you that Donald Trump was poised, and I was wrong about that. He's not poised at all. But yesterday the report was that he was poised to sign an executive order to restructure the government, or at least the executive branch of the government. That's the one that's up to him. And he did sign a thing, and it was styled as a reorganization of the executive branch. And ultimately, I'm sure that's what he would like to get out of it. But the substance of it is of considerably less interest. Essentially, it comes down to this. I mean, we could read it, but it's mostly boring. What translated, what it comes down to is he signed an executive order ordering all the people in the executive branch to go out there and find stuff that sucks and then recommend to him what he should order them to get rid of so that less sucky stuff remains. That's the restructuring of the government. And it may, what comes of it depends entirely upon what the people who are ordered to find the sucky stuff decide they're going to find and bring to his attention. And after due consideration, what he proposes to hand back to them and say, yeah, do that one. But, of course, another photo op of him signing the thing and holding it up for everybody to see, even though you can't read the type. He's got the entire cabinet behind him, including, I note here, there's Nikki Haley, who you think, shouldn't you be in New York, where the UN is? I mean, it's a short train ride and all, but maybe they're not meeting. But anyway, there she is. I don't know who that person is. I don't recognize her. Okay, but the rest of them I recognize as big-name cabinet-type dudes. Let's see, I see some thumbs up being given, some clapping done. The Hill covered the executive order this way. President Trump signed an executive order Monday aimed at cutting waste in the federal government. That's the way he put it in the or that's the way somebody put it to paper in order for him to scribble on for the executive order, or at least according to reports. We don't really know, I guess. You never really know what the executive order actually says. A couple of times, the executive order that's been posted at the White House is different from the one published in the Federal Register. A couple of times they've hidden the text for a few hours or as much as half a day. And who knows what he's signing and what these things actually say and whether or not one version will agree with another or which one is the legally controlling one. But that aside, assuming for the sake of discussion that the publicly available text of the executive order matches the actual text that he signed. If he signed it, I mean, there is video of him holding up a pamphlet, but I don't know. You got to question everything. Trump supposedly signed the measure in the Oval Office, according to this video anyway, telling reporters it requires a, quote, thorough examination of every executive department and agency, unquote, to find out, quote, where money is being wasted and how services can be improved, unquote. We will see about that. The order does not seek a set amount of cuts, but it could result in a push to eliminate entire federal agencies or dramatically cut the size of the federal workforce. Office of Management and Budget Director Mick Mulvaney will oversee a government-wide review, which will involve outside experts as well as federal officials. The president, flanked by his cabinet secretary, said the order would develop a detailed plan to make the federal government more efficient and very, very cost-productive. That's the wrong word, isn't it? Cost-productive? Cost-efficient? What did he think he was going to do with cost, starting with a P? We're going to produce a lot of costs. Very, very much of them. Wow. All right. Well, anyway, agency heads are instructed to provide their recommendations within 6 months to Mulvaney. That's an awful lot more than the 30 days he gave everybody to come up with an ISIS solution. By the way, we are 45 days past the January 28th signature date demanding a plan to defeat ISIS from the generals. They did make some sort of a report, I think, on day 30. That means it's been 2 weeks since they presented their awesome report. And Trump, let's see, so far has had one trip to Mar-a-Lago, one meeting at his other golf course, and is set to go, I think, back to Mar-a-Lago this weekend to meet the Chinese president. We'll talk a little bit about that one later on. But I think ISIS was defeated. I think they just didn't bother to tell us. You know, just sort of happened along the way. Agency heads are instructed to provide their recommendations within 6 months. That's a Friedman unit, as you well know. They give them to Mulvaney. Interesting. Who would then submit them to Congress before implementation. So once again, it's the president ordering everybody else to tell Mulvaney what they want done, and then Mulvaney will tell Congress to go do it. I have a suggestion to make the government more efficient and cost productive, if you will. Just do your own damn work, or do what you said you were going to do in the first place. We'll get to that also in a minute. That gave me another thought. Let's see. The executive order is part of the administration's aggressive push to shrink the federal government. That's a good way to do it, of course. I want to shrink the federal government, and now you all have new jobs. Go out and find ways to shrink the government. Then you tell him, and he'll tell them, and they'll tell me, and I'll tell you how to shrink and make more efficient or cost productive the federal government. During his first 50 days in office, Trump has issued a flurry of executive actions and pieces of legislation, no he hasn't, that have resulted in the repeal or delay of more than 90 regulations issued under President Obama on everything from the financial industry to the environment. Okay, just to correct the terminology there, Trump has, of course, issued a flurry of executive actions. That's true. He has signed a few pieces of legislation that came from the congressional or legislative branch, of course, that did result in repeal or delay of regulations. Just to get that right, Trump is expected to release a budget blueprint on Thursday that calls for massive across-the-board cuts to federal agencies to pay for major military buildup. We'll see about that one. And once again, I remind you that almost all presidential budgets are declared dead on arrival by both parties when they get there when they arrive on Capitol Hill. And you'll likely see pretty much the same thing happen, although I don't know. I'm not sure how he'll take that. Other presidents take it in stride because they know what the normal sequence of events is. But Trump might find that he is angered by anything less than laudatory statements from people who receive the document. So we'll see what he'll tolerate. He'll put the word out about how much criticism he will allow. Presidential budgets, they do note here, Here are some of the cuts they're talking about before we get to that. The cuts could reduce funds for climate change research, no surprise there, conservation funding, foreign aid, support for public housing, and the size of the federal workforce, which is at its low ebb, I would think, already, mostly due to the fact that, of course, it had been reduced over the course of many years in the Obama administration, and the fact that he hasn't appointed anybody to any of the important jobs, but he doesn't think they're important. Anyway, Trump, presidential budgets usually amount to nothing more than a starting point for Congress, and critics in both parties say Trump's plan contains cuts that are too deep and ignores entitlement programs that are the main driver of the national debt. But Trump has repeatedly indicated he wants to take an axe to the federal government, which you can do. You can take an axe anywhere, I suppose. You just can't use it. Something that could spark major controversy in the weeks and months ahead. Monday's executive order could kickstart the reduction of the number of federal workers, a process that would fuel Trump's ongoing battle with the bureaucracy he was elected to lead. Well, good luck with that one. Let's see. Of the other bits of news that I thought deserved some attention, let's see. Did I not put this one aside? Maybe I just figured that this wasn't surprising enough to count as news, but did I mention this yesterday? That the president, you may recall, both during the election campaign and post-election, he made a lot of promises, including one to refuse his salary as president. I think we probably did mention this one. Because now I recall noting that the Constitution does, of course, require that he be paid and that the salary not be reduced during his term in office. And so officially the Treasury must transfer the $400,000 in annual pay to his custody. What he chooses to do with it afterwards is up to him. Of course, he said he was going to donate it all. First he said to the Treasury, then later he said maybe to charity, and now he says, I'm not really sure where I'm going to donate it, which is his way of saying, I haven't donated it. You get paid monthly as president, and apparently he has not thought this through, not surprising, and he would have gotten paid at the end of each month during which he served, so I assume some prorated monies for January. But maybe they pay him for the transition too. I don't know. But you get about about 33,000 each pay period, something like that. I think I saw that reported. And so he's had 2 checks handed over to him in one way or another. Perhaps it was electronic transfer. I don't know. But he's had 2 chances to donate it. And when the White House was pressed on that one, they said, yeah, I can't tell you where he donated it, and that's actually, now that you mention it, because I don't know whether he has or not. Now, he hasn't, and I believe the latest word out of the White House is that he has decided he will donate it at the end of the year. Come back and see me tomorrow, or rather the end of the year. I have a year to decide what I'm going to do with it, and I'll put all that money in escrow, and we'll hang on to it for later, and everybody will be happy when I finally do hand it over. And then he suggested, as one of his favorite tricks is to then say, well, I want suggestions from everybody. The media, all you guys who are such critics should tell me what you think I should do with the money, which is a pretty amazing thing to ask normally, but as I mentioned, it's sort of one of his favorite tricks. We read a lot during the campaign about his sort of negotiating style, the way he dealt with vendors and such, people that he intended to screw over. He, knowing he was going to screw them over, he would invite them in for negotiations into the office. And while he was telling them he was going to screw them over, or as he was winding up to that, he very often would solicit their advice about things, both related to the project that they were discussing and not, in an attempt to sort of flatter them into thinking, oh, this person takes me seriously. He wants my advice about various things. What color do you think I should make the casino carpeting? What do you think I should do with my presidential salary? No, as it happens, I think you should stuff both up your whatever, but that's not really what you asked me to come here for. That, and so I think he's doing that with the press too. And I don't know whether they're going to take that seriously. I don't think anybody's going to bother making a suggestion. I mean, the only suggestion I have for it is you should do what the hell you said you were going to do, which is to donate your salary back to the Treasury to reduce costs. I mean, you just put out your own executive order saying how can we make the government more cost productive, whatever that's supposed to mean. And the answer is you could save the government $400,000 by giving it right the hell back to the Treasury. Why solicit the names of charities? And it'll probably work. I don't know. Somebody will come up with a charity or two, and he may or may not give money to it. But I don't know. Seems unnecessary. Seems like the same sort of nonsense he usually uses to deflect from what's going on. And I love the thing about, I'll do it at the end of the year. I mean, you're getting paid now. The money is being transferred into your account. And of course, one of their favorite tricks, of course, is to let money accumulate in the account. Just collect the interest, such as it is. It's not a tremendous amount of money, but it makes cash available to him for a year. And then maybe later, if anybody remembers to ask him and he thinks anybody would care if at the end of the year he said, the hell with it, I'm not going to do it, then maybe he'll get around to it. But, I don't know. It says a lot about him, the way he operates. And, of course, the false claim that he's a very, very rich billionaire type person. That kind of person would not need the $33,000 on a monthly basis, and they could dispense with it pretty easily. There would be no reason to wait to the end of the year. I think he's just waiting to see whether or not either he gets impeached, I guess that's a possibility, or anybody remembers, or whether he thinks with the passage of time he can get away with simply saying, it should be nothing to a billionaire, but I'm not a billionaire, and $400,000, well, that's cash. I'll take it. I hope everybody forgets about it. All right, I'll have to find the news story on that one in order to include it in the roundup, but let's see. A couple other things on the burner for today. Here's something that I want to get to. Has nothing to do with Donald Trump. It has everything to do with our friend Bill in Portland, Maine. I want to let you know that there is, as is often the case, this is one of the great things about the Daily Kos community. When a member of the community has fallen ill, there is very often the community quilt effort launched this time. Once again, Sarah R. with a diary over at Daily Kos. Easy to find. Community Quilt for Bill in Portland, Maine is the title. I'll include it, of course, there in the roundup, too. And your opportunity to let Bill know how much you appreciate him, how much you're thinking about his getting better, and how you wish him well. And those of you familiar with the community quilting will know this already. Those of you not familiar might find it very interesting to participate in something like this. It's, of course, a community-funded effort as well. But even if you can't afford to make a donation, they would love to include a note from you. This is what they do. You basically, joining in the effort means leaving a message for the community quilt recipient with those making the quilt, and they transfer it to a piece of the material that they're using for the quilt. So it's a nice, not only does it make a nice gesture to have everybody's kind words there, but there's a physical manifestation of everybody's best wishes. And it has a special meaning, of course, for the Daily Kos community and for someone like Bill. So I encourage you all to participate in that if you like, if that's if that's how you want to convey your best wishes, it would be most welcome. We'll include it once again in the roundup. And I think, I think I just saw, not that long ago, Justice, who is, of course, lurking behind the scenes, making everything work here at Netroots Radio, mention that diary. I'll see if I can't bring it up and retweet it for those of you listening live and who just can't wait to become a part of the effort to buck up the spirits. That's with a B. Buck up the spirits for Bill up there in Portland, Maine. And the alternative, if you wanted to F up his spirits, we'll see what we can do about that one. We'll come up with a new project. Okay. Let's see. Where can I find? All right. I've searched in the wrong place. So much for that one. Okay, here we go. Oh, there we are. The community quilt for Bill, as retweeted by Justice, on its way to those of you listening live. As for the rest of this stuff, now I have to reverse myself and get back over to my tweet deck and have that open so I can monitor things. Keep an eye on it for comments along the way. Let's see. A couple other pieces of news, including a few bits of comic relief from our Canadian pundit friend, Canuck pundit, Bill Monroe, up there in the Great White North, if you will. But first, a stop at, this is an unusual source, not usually the one I would go to on this one, and I'm sure it's being reported all over the place, but this one happened to make itself available. The beauty of Twitter and the internet, the wide variety of news sources people refer me to. Speaking of the president of China coming by, this one at Yahoo News, although interestingly uknews.yahoo.com. We've got this. The family of Trump son-in-law, that would be the Kushners, of course, in a $4 billion deal with a Chinese company. That's a lot of dollars for a deal, isn't it? It presents some emoluments problems, as you might imagine, and as Armando may have a few comments about. By the way, door's open for you if this is bugging you, Armando, that I haven't seen that, I don't know, he may be out there shoveling today. I doubt it very much. Maybe he's in Florida. Anyway, a company owned by the family of President Donald Trump's son-in-law and one of his chief advisors, don't forget that, Jared Kushner, is set to receive more than $400 million from a Chinese firm that is investing in its Manhattan office tower, Bloomberg reported Monday. Now, $400 million isn't $4 billion, but there's more money involved in this. Wait, hold on. The Kushner companies, I love the creativity with which these guys name their organizations. There's the Trump organization and the Kushner companies. The Kushner companies deal with Anbang Insurance Group, and I don't know whether Mr. Anbang is any more or less creative about that or not, or maybe there is no Mr. Anbang, and maybe it means something in Chinese. But anyway, the Anbang Insurance Group for the property at, this is good, 666 Fifth Avenue. Now, if you're going to, by the way, shoot a person in the middle of Fifth Avenue just to see if it does or does not cost you any votes, 666 Fifth Avenue is a great address from which to do it. That's the place you want to be. Well, the deal, as they said, is worth $4 billion. There's the B again, with real estate experts calling it an unusually favorable deal for the Kushners. I mispronounced it because it's misspelled here. Favorable. You know how they are over in the UK. An unusually favorable deal for the Kushners, according to this report. It would value the 41-story tower, and I don't know whether that's numbered Trump style or whether there really are 41 stories in there, at $2.85 billion, the most ever for a single building in wealthy Manhattan. Thank you for reminding us that Manhattan is wealthy, you UK guys. So already we have 3 different numbers on here. Let's see if we can, here comes a 4th. We'll see if we can reconcile all of this stuff. So the building is worth $2.85 billion. The investment deal gives Kushner companies a cash payout, an equity stake in a new partnership, and refinancing of $1.14 billion in existing mortgage debt, said Bloomberg. I should just go to Bloomberg on this, but I didn't. Which obtained details of the agreement, which is being circulated to attract other investors. A large chunk of the $250 million loan will be forgiven, allowing it to be cleared for $50 million, the report said. Now I really want to get a hold of the Bloomberg thing and see if this makes it any clearer. This is a huge, huge exit strategy for an office building, lawyer Joshua Stein told Bloomberg. Of course, it won't be the building that's exiting. It will be people exiting from ownership of the building itself. But you know how these buzzwords go. It does sound like a home run of a transaction for Kushner and his group. Anbang has murky links to the Chinese power structure, and its previous investments in the United States have raised concerns over national security, Bloomberg said. So why not have one of the president's relatives and chief advisors involved in it, right? But Kushner Company's spokesman James Yolis was reported as saying that Jared Kushner, the husband of Trump's daughter Ivanka and a senior advisor to the president, has sold his stake in 666 Fifth Avenue. So there was no conflict of interest. Yeah, of course. But the deal raises the possibility of a sweetheart deal for the Kushners, said Larry Noble, general counsel at the Campaign Legal Center. A classic way you influence people is by financially helping their family, he told Bloomberg. Trump's own business links with China. He holds at least 72 trademarks in the country and has as many as 45 such applications pending. Really? I thought they were all cleared out. Well, there's more emoluments to give him, I guess, as time goes on. I want to string it along, I guess. They have prompted warnings that he could potentially violate the U.S. Constitution, but who cares, and leave himself exposed, oh my, to charges of conflicts of interest. And we know how much he cares about those. Anbang's ownership is unclear. It has no publicly listed units and does not name its shareholders on its website, because China. Established just 13 years ago, Anbang has grown from a domestic seller of property insurance into a financial services powerhouse, making a name for itself abroad by buying New York's historic Waldorf Astoria Hotel for a record $1.95 billion in 2014. It breaks its own record here with 666 Fifth Avenue. I think I did know, in fact, that Anbang bought the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, but only because, well, you know how I work. I knew about it because there was an accidental shooting at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel at a wedding. You remember, not that long ago. And it was a Russian guy, too, by the way. And if you're really looking for conspiracy theory, some Russian-American dude who showed up at a very fancy wedding, of course, at the Waldorf Astoria, with a gun in his pocket, accidentally fired it during the celebrations, and I think the Waldorf closed off the area and canceled the event. And the family of the bride is suing the Waldorf Astoria, and I guess, eventually the Anbang group as well, for ruining the wedding. Not the guy who shot the gun, but the Waldorf Astoria for saying, oh my gosh, you're not supposed to be firing weapons in here. We'll have to close things down. Anyway, we'll see where that suit goes. Eventually we'll hear more about that one. Last year, Anbang paid hedge fund Blackstone $6.5 billion for 16 luxury properties. It also made a $14 billion bid for Starwood Hotels and Resorts worldwide, but suddenly rescinded the offer last spring, citing market considerations, which every once in a while those market considerations do play a role in the market, don't they? At the time, respected Chinese business magazine Caixin, Caixin, that's my best guess at what that is pronounced as, reported that China's insurance regulator opposed Anbang's multi-billion-dollar bids for Starwood and the Blackstone properties. It remains to be seen whether Anbang's campaign to become an international hotelier will be stymied by Beijing's current efforts to stem capital outflows. China has urged domestic companies to avoid irrational overseas investments, citing real estate and hotels among those fields being closely monitored by regulatory departments. But, of course, sending $4 billion to the Kushners is not seen as irrational enough. That makes a great deal of sense. And so far, anyway, they seem to be perfectly happy with that one. It will, at the very minimum, cause headaches in Washington, D.C., even if it doesn't cause any headaches inside the White House, because they don't care about this stuff. All right, let's see. A few other interesting stories. Today's a good day to catch up, I think. It's still a little bit quiet because of the snow, and that gives us a chance to catch up on some of the nuttier stories that have been sitting here in pocket, waiting for their moment in the sun, if you will. Let's see. And we've got a couple. Where do we want to start with this one? Oh, I don't know. How about let's do some crazy Trump deal stories. Why not? Everyone loves those. This time from the Palm Beach Post. And this is an interesting one. This one came up probably during the campaign, and I know we've read about this thing, and oh boy, now I have to click through 4 or 5 things that aren't supposed to block you from reading the article, but just remind you you're not a subscriber to this particular newspaper. But I'm stuck with the pinwheel, of course, spinning here today. I think the internet will be a little sluggish today. We're going to have some extra customers online here since we have everybody at home today. All right. We heard about this in passing during the campaign among the many strange real estate dealings that were out there in Trump world. Do you remember that there was another Palm Beach mansion that Trump owned at one point, besides Mar-a-Lago, that he had paid some ridiculous amount of money for and never moved into, and then apparently sold it at some enormous profit? And then we found out, oh, by the way, he sold it to some Russian oligarch who bought it and also never moved into it, and in fact tore it down entirely after having paid a record price for it. And I think, once again, another record broken, although sometimes I wonder whether he's really... Trump seems to be involved in a lot of record-breaking things, but I have the feeling that it's occasionally just something that he has publicists tell reporters are record-breaking prices, and they might not be, because who checks the records on these things? I don't. If you told me it was a record-setting price, I think I really would believe it. Now, although now I have the sense that we ought to approach those things with caution. What I don't have is the time to actually find out whether it is a record or not. Why don't we just assume it's not a record and that he's lying and save ourselves a lot of time? I'm trying to make my personal governance much more cost productive, if that helps you understand these things. Okay, let's see. So here's the article. Alexandra Clow and John Pacenti are the writers here for the Palm Beach Post. Trump in Palm Beach. Why did this particular Russian, pay so much for his mansion? That's a good question. I would like to know the answer. Do you have it? Maybe, maybe not. Let's see. Why did a Russian oligarch pay now President Donald Trump $95 million for his Palm Beach mansion? Once again, pay attention to the records, pay attention to the numbers. Just in terms of, I think at some point in this story, it's reported here $95 million, and at some point in discussing it with reporters, Trump says it was $100 million. It wasn't. It's close, but he has to exaggerate it, right? Anyway, almost a decade later, that is after the actual transaction, the answer is less clear than it was at the time of the sale. The largest price paid for a Palm Beach home. See, it's a record, goddammit. In 2008, Dmitry Rybolovev, and this guy's name comes up all the time. Louise Mensch is totally obsessed with this guy. Maybe with good reason, maybe not. Not sure yet, but let me see if we can't get this one right. Rybolovlev. Pretty close. If we just, we might have to drop that extra V in there. Rybolovlev. That's not such a bad pronunciation. That's the guy, by the way, whose plane Louise Mensch is pretty sure she's always tracking to and finding that it lands, well, 3 or 4 times landed in strange locales, sometimes places you wouldn't expect a Russian oligarch's plane to land. Miami is a place that you might expect them to land, but I don't know, a couple other locations too, landing in advance of Trump's arrival there a few hours later, and she finds that very suspicious. And it is very suspicious. I don't know if it's worth basing a cottage industry on, but I don't know. Seems to be working out for her, personally. I don't know if it's proving anything. Anyway, Dmitry, that's a much easier name to say, bought this Palm Beach mansion owned by Trump for $13 million more than the most expensive Palm Beach mansion sale up to that moment. I told you it was a record by $13 million. It's almost a decade since the sale, but the transaction is newsworthy again as new questions surround contacts between members of Trump's administration and Russian government officials. Gee whiz, I hadn't heard anything about that. But okay, let's take a look at that one. On Friday, A Rybolovlev spokesman said his client, who made his fortune in fertilizer potash, purchased the former mansion at 515 North County Road for his family's trust. If you wanted to show up and take a look at the mansion, I think it's gone now, but you can take a look at the property. Google your way to 515 North County Road in Palm Beach. The property was acquired for investment purposes by the Rybolovlev Family Trust, as was clearly stated at the time of the purchase in 2008, according to Brian Cattell, a New York-based spokesman for Rybolovlev. I'm going to make another stab at that one. Okay. No, I'm not. Who am I kidding? The 62,000 square foot mansion formerly was known as Maison de l'Amitié, or House of Friendship. How exciting. At the time of the purchase, Rybolovlev characterized the purchase as an investment, but he did not specify it was for a family trust. The acquisition is simply an investment in real estate by one of the companies in which I have an interest, Rybolovlev said at the time through a spokesman for Uralkali. I wonder if that's Uralkali, the fertilizer company he previously owned. Uralkali? Very clever. That's better than, he could have called it the Rybolovlev company. Anyway, let's see. Cattell, the spokesperson, said Sunday that the mansion's purchase through an entity called, all right, well, back to the creativity, folks. He called the entity County Road Property LLC. Very, this is a very common thing, and you see Trump do it all the time, too. It doesn't matter what the company's called, so you come up with something stupid and easy to figure out what it is when you see the title. So County Road Property LLC, a company formed for the purchase of the property on County Road. It was always for a family trust, says Cattell. There is no inconsistency in what we have said. Certainly nothing worth bringing up. Anyway, there's more here. After the mansion purchase, Rybolovlev disavowed any interest in the property during his messy divorce from now ex-wife Elena. In her 2009 lawsuit, Elena said Dmitry has a history of secreting and transferring assets in order to avoid his obligations, including paying her money as part of the divorce. As a result, she filed a legal action in Palm Beach County Circuit Court to claim her share of the Palm Beach mansion. At the time, Rybolovlev was on the Forbes list of the world's billionaires at number 59, worth an estimated net worth of $12.8 billion. In 2011, court documents in his divorce stated that Mr. Rybolovlev, it's really killing me to have to do this name so many times, has not purchased or managed any real estate in Florida for investment purposes, either directly or indirectly, according to a motion filed in the divorce case. That was news to Trump, and probably inspiration to Trump as well. These guys are really rather amazing. Okay. By the way, weather news, I see that we are up to the stage of the storm wherein we have sightings of thunder snow in the New York area. How exciting. For those of you in the Park Slope neighborhood, artisanal, locally sourced thunder snow for you to enjoy. All right, so here's back to Rybolovlev saying, I purchased it as an investment. And then when he was sued for a part of it, he says, I don't have any investments in Florida or anywhere else. I'm a pauper, as is so frequently the case in these divorce proceedings. But this was news to Trump. Trump says so by saying it this way, somebody paid me $100 million, Trump told a Palm Beach Post reporter in February of 2011. Of course, nobody did. Somebody agreed, I think, to pay you $95 million, but that's not $100, and you know very well who it was. So here we are, by the way, the piece then illustrated with a photo of a very, large, but not as large as current Trump, standing in 2005 in his very classy pleated khakis and rather gigantic belt, golf shirt, and red golf hat with his locks sticking out over his ears on both sides. arms crossed, aggressively letting you know that the garbage pit behind him is his, and you can have it for whatever $1 million. Trump made a hefty profit on the flip. He had scooped up the estate for $41.35 million in 2004 out of healthcare magnate Abe Gossman's bankruptcy filing. That was back in the days where you could go bankrupt as a healthcare magnate. I guess, in essence, Trump sold for more than double what he had paid 4 years before. Prior to the Trump sale, which at the time was the highest price paid for any single-family home in the country, another damn record, he'll have you know, the most expensive home sold on Palm Beach had been an estate at 1236 South Ocean Boulevard. That property traded hands for $81.5 million earlier in 2008. Throughout the divorce litigation, Rybolovlev gave his wife's attorney differing reasons for the mansion purchase, said David Newman, a partner with Sills, Cummins & Gross in New York City. At various times in court records, Rybolovlev said the house was for investment purposes. Then he said it would be for his children, or maybe an inheritance, which also would probably be for his children, or it might be used in connection with his daughter, who's also one of his children, because she was an equestrian, according to Newman. What? So, 10 different reasons why I bought it. One, it could be an investment. It could be, no, it's an inheritance. No, it's for my children. No, it's for my children. No, it's also for my children. I think he was trying to get at the idea that he was going to give it to his kids. Why she would use it because she's an equestrian, I have no idea. No indication here that there's any equestrian facilities, but whatever. What do I know? There could be something I don't see that's out of frame here. By the way, this mansion, squat little thing, actually kind of looks like maybe a wedding catering hall more than anything else. Very close to the actual beach. It's clearly, it's waterfront property, but boy, the sand, there's not much back lawn to this thing. This thing was in danger all along. Anyway, back to the article. There's also the issue of Rybolovlev's marital status and whether he was trying to protect his assets in connection with a divorce mode situation, said Newman, who represented Elena. Newman said he found the whole deal curious. It was out of the ordinary because of the uniqueness of the property, the speed of the transaction, and the fact that Newman's team never was able to uncover any evidence that Rybolovlev had performed any professional reviews of the property. If you're wondering about, we are spending an awful lot of time on this, and this is kind of boring. Does it lead anywhere? I guess the answer down at the bottom here is yeah. This is where it starts to get really weird, where a Russian oligarch says, oh, Donald Trump owns this thing, I'll pay him twice what he paid like a couple of years ago, sight unseen, and then tear it down. It does smack of something weird and wrong about this deal, doesn't it? Newman thinks so. He found the whole thing curious. It was out of the ordinary because of the uniqueness of the property, how quickly they did it, and the fact that Newman's team was never able to uncover any evidence that Rybolovlev had performed any professional reviews of the property. If someone is paying $90-something million, not 100, 90-something, more than anyone else has ever paid for a private residence, one would think they might look around to do a little due diligence or even have an inspection, Newman said. But Newman said his team never found any evidence that Rybolovlev hired experts to weigh in on the property's condition as a residence or its value as a teardown before he bought the place. I guess if you have billions of dollars, maybe you just don't look. The Rybolovlev's divorce was finalized in 2014 with a record $4.8 billion awarded to Elena. That amount subsequently was slashed to $604 million by a judge in 2015 and then later settled privately. So down from $4.8 billion to $604 million, and then maybe even a little bit less after that. Good lawyering on their part. Speaking of which, Armando joins us. Where are you, Armando? Are you in the snow or in Florida? Oh, well, maybe he's in the snow, and the snow got him. He just jumped. Okay, we lost his call there. But it sounded like he was driving somewhere. And if he was driving, I hope it's in Florida. Maybe he's on his way to, 515 North County Road in Palm Beach to check out the gaping hole that was once the $95 million mansion. Bought, for some reason, by just coincidentally a Russian oligarch from coincidentally Donald Trump. Good morning, Armando. How you doing?
Hey, David. Did I miss you the first time on my attempt to connect with you?
Yes. Well, I got you on, and then I didn't hear you when I went to you, so maybe the line wasn't that good. Are you in the snow or out of it today?
I'm in Florida.
There you go.
I'm very clever in that way.
Yeah. You see these, they give you these advance warnings, and then you leave. It's a good idea.
That's right.
Okay. Are you in Palm Beach? Are you on North County Road?
I am in Palm Beach. I am probably 15 miles as the crow flies from Mar-a-Lago as we speak.
Excellent. You might want to stop by also at 515 North County Road to see the site of the former $95 million mansion that Donald Trump flipped to the Russian oligarch that we're talking about.
Did they demolish?
Yes, so you can go and see the gaping hole that was there. Yeah, that was an interesting transaction. We're the Palm Beach Post still trying to dig out a reason why somebody would pay double what Trump paid for it and apparently shatter all records for a private residence anywhere in the United States and then tear it down. Although it might have been because he was getting divorced and people do things like that rather than let their wife have it, they destroy it.
I mean, I'm somewhat familiar with that deal.
Yeah.
And I have read about it, but the tearing it down, these rich people, they do, Tiger Woods' wife did the same thing. She bought a mansion just to tear it down. They wanted the land.
It was the wrong color.
But the weird thing about it, of course, is the price.
Yes.
And the time frame. I mean, it's just way out of market. I mean, nobody would have paid for that.
No, I guess
it does
not.
have the appearances of something going on. Most likely, it's, different story.
Okay. Well, I noted also that Donald Trump insisted on inflating the number when he talked to the press. It's $95 million, but he told them it was $100.
I think that's the recorded price on the because they record the sales.
Yeah, 95,
listen,
right?
I don't know for a fact. It just smells of money laundering.
Yes. Nope, we don't hear you now. I guess that's the drawback of driving while you're calling.
Oh, did you not hear me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay, I got you now.
All right, what I was saying, it's a money laundering is really a staple of Trump's business. I mean, not ostensibly, turning dirty money into clean money, but dirty money is used to buy a lot of Trump Tower apartments.
Yes. That's an easy way to do it.
I believe this is of the piece. I think this was cleansing some dirty Russian money by buying a Trump property.
Yeah, so it would seem. And I think that, maybe that at that point in 2005, it seems like a little bit early, but I think it was clear early on to Russian oligarchs anyway that that a good way to clean dirty money is through real estate in the United States. The laws are just very favorable. There's no basis in American law for questioning a judgment call like how much you'll pay for a rather unique property or even a not so unique property. So it's wide open. And then I think they said, well, what kind of idiot would have these sorts of properties available for disposal for us? Oh, and the answer obviously is Donald Trump. He's always got a tremendous inventory of BS properties at which no one would bat an eye if you dropped several $1 million, even if no one thought it was worth it. If you're looking for property that has an insane price that no one will ask twice about because he's constantly involved in ridiculous deals that don't make any sense, Donald Trump is your guy.
Yeah, I mean, there's that, and I think it's, they had inventory in certain buildings when they were going bad in the mid-2000s. The Apprentice saved them a little bit in terms of having cash flow, but his real estate empire still was, in shambles to the degree that it's an empire, and said it himself. The Russians saved him.
Yeah. So this no different there. It's just earlier than usual, and was before he had set up a conveyor belt, an assembly line style money laundering operation. I just happen to have one property that you can launder nearly $100 million on.
Yeah, I think there's truth to that. Look, that property we've recovered. The economy's recovered in Florida. The real estate economy's recovered in Florida. The Palm Beach real estate market is recovered in Florida. No one is going to pay half of what that Russian paid for that property if you put it on the market now.
Yeah.
Something else was going on. I mean, that's just the reality. I mean, anybody that denies this is just being foolish.
So it would seem.
But I was actually listening a little bit about, first of all, so as you may have noticed, I haven't been around much, but I was actually in Washington all last week on trial.
Oh.
So I just didn't have time.
Okay. Fair enough.
But I have been following the emolument story, and I am fascinated by the story you were talking about before, the refinancing of the 666 building.
Yes.
For people of my age, they'll remember the 666 building used to have a bar at the top. I don't even know if it still does.
Huh.
It was top of the sixes or whatever it was called. I assume it's still there, but I don't know. But that sweetheart deal for Jared Kushner is absolutely an emolument to the degree that the Chinese company has deep ties with the Chinese government, which it reportedly does.
Yeah, well, they're all going to, and that's the structure. That's the way the system works in China.
Yeah, and of course the trademarks themselves, which may be valid or invalid, but that's the whole problem with Trump. Not divesting. It's an emolument. I mean, whether he has a right to it or not. I mean, I don't even know which trademarks we're talking about and whether they're valid or not. But let's assume for the sake of argument they are. It's a problem. Trump is getting an emolument. It would be true, by the way, if he got it from the federal government, if he registered for a federal trademark. That would violate the domestic emoluments clause. These are things that are not hard, and nobody's paying attention to them. But the Chinese deal is truly remarkable in that the emoluments clause, I believe Jared Kushner has assumed a position of trust in the government. I think he's calling himself an official government aide, right? Isn't he a presidential counselor or something? Mm-hmm. The emoluments clause applies to him. He can't do this.
But
I mean, he can, but somebody can also say something now.
I don't know. Yeah.
To me, this is actually a matter that could be raised by the Justice Department. It's not, the president is in certain ways inviolate and all that other stuff, but the aides aren't.
Yeah.
I mean, Michael Flynn has an emoluments problem.
He did.
He did, and he does, because his problem is still there, in that he was taking emoluments from foreign governments in two ways. As a retired military officer, by the way, this is why Michael Flynn had an emoluments problem. Military officers, active or retired, are considered to be holding positions of trust. You can't be a foreign lobbyist and be a retired military official.
Right. And, of course, we now know that he was also a national security advisor while he was a paid foreign agent, which is usually also known as.
Listen, I'm not even going, I'm keeping it simple in the first instance. Say, look, here's the black, here's the white, here's the emoluments clause. He's a retired military officer, which has by tradition been considered a position of trust. They are not permitted to be foreign lobbyists. They just aren't.
And yet
he did it to the tune of $500,000.
Right. And side story there. I'll have to find the articles for it at some point and put it aside. But yeah, I also read that he was paying some sort of retainer to a FBI agent at the same time.
An ex-FBI agent who made up this story about there being a quid pro quo with McCabe and the State Department. With regard to, we'll scratch your back on this if you scratch my back on that. It turned out to be false. And
No, I
it
would've
turned
made
out
that
to
up
be
for free.
made by a guy who was on General Flynn's payroll.
The going rate for
You can't
making
write
up
this
lies.
stuff.
Unbelievable. I should be in on this business. I will write lies for half the cost.
It's remarkable. And of course, now I know you mentioned, and it's worth noting that the Chinese premier or president, I don't know what title they have in China these days, but the number one guy in China is going to meet Trump in Mar-a-Lago.
Yes.
What's that?
I
mean,
don't know.
Mar-a-Lago?
Why is he bringing all the Asians to Mar-a-Lago? I'm not sure why that is the case. Has he hosted a non-Asian leader at Mar-a-Lago as president yet? I mean, it's early on, but
Not yet, but I'm sure Nigel Farage will have his day, and if Marine Le Pen wins in France,
yeah,
she'll get the Mar-a-Lago.
Could you get away with that in France? Do you think that? In France they're very conscious of very conscious of style. Don't you think that they would think that Mar-a-Lago is too gauche for them? But maybe not.
Well, Marine Le Pen is pretty gauche, so I mean,
okay.
There is to me, beyond that. Who knows? I mean, this is just we're through the looking glass, and in fact, what's interesting about it is all this corruption is being overshadowed by another subject I'm sure you've been discussing these days, this healthcare thing.
Mm-hmm, of course.
And I think there's something good about it, and yet there's something bad. I mean, we've decided that corruption's not a big deal anymore, and that's what it is now: corruption.
Yeah.
This Kushner deal is corruption.
Yes, no doubt.
He's trading his government influence for a better financial deal.
Yes, that's all it is.
I don't know how anybody, for all this time, listen, you and I lived through the Clinton years, and this last campaign.
Yeah.
What's the media doing?
They're just, it's the old flooding the zone thing. There's just too much going on.
And on some levels, I understand the substance of this health bill is so important that I get that that's crowded out everything. But let's not forget this. Let's at least put a pin in it and come back to it.
Okay. We can do that.
We will, and we'll talk about it all the time, every day, as much as we can. But, the media, I get it. And look, I mean, they're covering the health story, at least from what I can tell, pretty well.
Yes, no doubt about that. And it's not making any difference. It's not sinking in with the people who are paid to ignore the press, or they've done so much of the legwork for delegitimizing the reporting that's being done on what they're about to vote on anyway.
Well, the CBO, I was struck by one thing. Paul Ryan's reaction to the CBO report was stunning, wasn't it? Did you read that?
I haven't read through it.
He's celebrating. He says, "Look, they say it's like he said that it was a wonderful report for his proposal."
Yeah,
really lauded his proposal.
They do believe that, and their explanation, of course, we did get to the part about where he explains that the reason they say people will lose coverage is because they'll opt not to buy that coverage. It's not that they'll lose it, won't be taken away. They'll just have more choice about whether or not they want to buy it or not. I.e., it will be up to them to buy it. There won't be a mandate that they buy it, and it'll be too expensive for them. But they won't be losing anything. Okay. But he's also
is that really his argument?
That's his argument about the loss numbers. Yes, he's also actually. He was pointing mostly to other parts of the CBO report and saying fiscal hawks will love this because there is actual savings involved. The savings is we're not paying for anybody to be able to afford health care. We're saving money.
$330 billion over 10 years, I believe, is the number.
Well, at least that's an ideological argument that they have made all along. We don't want to spend the money on helping people buy health insurance, and so we're not going to. So that's expected.
Well, then just embrace it and say that.
Yes.
That's not what they're saying. They're saying they're going to have coverage for everybody that wants it. No, they're not.
Does Ryan say that?
Yes.
Oh, well, then I don't know what the hell he's talking about. Oh no, yes I do. Yeah, I guess that goes back to his spin. We're going to have coverage for everybody who wants it. Those who don't have it are the ones who don't want it. That's how it works. Because we're repealing the individual
That's why
mandate.
I don't have a mansion in Palm Beach, I guess, because I don't want it.
That is true. You could have it. I mean, why not? Everybody else who has it under a mountain of debt. Why don't you? And I guess that's true to a certain extent, but as you know, the rich are different, and they can be rich while being in debt, whereas you and I are just in debt.
I guess, Paul Ryan has always been a liar. This one's pretty brazen, it seems to me.
Yeah, well, I'm enjoying the cleverness of the spin, I guess, in that sense. I'm going to take over for Chris Cillizza when he moves to CNN.
No, how about that?
I could say I admire the brilliance of the spin. There you go. Give me a column. But it is really astonishing. And so how much of it depends on the individual.
I hate Cillizza, but I'm going to take a moment. I think he's making a mistake here.
Oh,
he's not serious or interesting enough on his own to just go to CNN and have people pick him up. He needed that Washington Post brand. It seems to me, for people to even pay attention to his vacuous nonsense.
That may be.
I don't think CNN's going to work for him.
Huh. Yeah, it's normally, of course, regarded as a big promotion, although I'm not really sure why.
It's not a promotion per se. He's just going to make a lot more money.
Well,
I mean, because it's much more of a TV gig, right? So he's he's not going to be paid on newspaper wages. He's going to be paid on TV wages, which are much higher.
Yes, there is that. So that, in his mind, I'm sure that is a promotion. I don't know whether it's more prestigious or not, but it's more dollars, and that's the same thing in Trump world.
It's not more prestigious. It's less prestigious. I mean, that's sort of my point. I mean, the Washington Post is more prestigious than CNN.
In the old world, right. To those of us who keep the old gods.
And the people that pay attention, are you paying more attention to a CNN report or a Washington Post story?
Yeah, okay.
Which do you take more seriously? You take the Washington Post story more seriously.
I do. That's true.
So does everybody.
But
I don't think you're alone here. CNN is CNN. They have Jeffrey Lord on.
That's true. They hired Corey Lewandowski.
And they have people who are idiots on. And, so in that sense, Liz is in the idiots pile. Now, he'll pretend he's a journalist, but he's never going to actually break a story. He never has. There's nothing that he does that's going to really bring value unless you think he has insights in terms of his analysis. And no one does. Literally, no one does. Come on, we all just laugh at it, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, occasionally he comes through with something fun and interesting, although more often it's, I can't believe he just reported that. How horrible. And we'll all talk about it. But, yeah, I don't know how his day went at the Washington Post, but he had a staff there, a bunch of people who produced content under his...
And some decent people at that. I mean, the fix itself, but the website he had built was not bad. He was bad. But the website actually wasn't terrible.
I assume he'll have a staff of, reporters that he can assign to do work.
Yeah, he'll bring Blake along, I assume. I mean, it's not going to leave Blake behind. I assume he's bringing Blake, but maybe he's not.
I don't know.
Kaczynski brought his whole team when he came from BuzzFeed.
Yeah. Okay.
And he continues to report, and he actually reports. He breaks stories.
Yes. Well, he digs through,
which Cillizza doesn't do.
Record in a way that's well, true. I'm not terribly disturbed by it, I guess.
I don't care. In fact, I'm happy because now my Washington Post dollars aren't going to Chris Cillizza. Okay. I mean, I feel cleaner. But I mean, just as a gossipy aside, I think it's listen, the checks are the money's the money. He's probably making $1 million a year now, so good for him. Mm-hmm. But I think his reach is actually going to be less. But what does he care? It's good for all of us. He makes some more money, and less people pay attention to him. So it's a win-win.
Yeah,
if you think about it.
All right. Well, okay. I'll take that. It's not that upsetting.
Yeah, exactly. I probably talked about it more than it's worth, but he is a special contempt I have for him. I've told him on Twitter to his face he's the worst reporter in Washington D.C. and
To his Twitter face.
To his Twitter face that he's the worst reporter in Washington D.C. and he should. I basically point and laugh at him as sport, which I've done for a while, but now I don't even have to pay attention to him.
I guess not. Okay, well so you're right. Win-win.
Win-win. So that's what we're hearing. Whatever happened, and Joan's tomorrow, right? So she'll know all these things.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever happened to the whole budget, the government shutdown stuff? Is that fixed? Isn't the budget about to expire?
Well, something is. All right. I mean, she mentioned the Ides of March. That would be tomorrow.
Yeah.
Good question. I don't remember whether that was, what would it have to have been something important? It can't possibly have been
the government shutting down. It can't be that. Because I think we would have heard about that.
The debt ceiling, because we would have heard. Yeah, what was, I don't know. Now I can't remember exactly what she told me. Well, tomorrow will be the day, and she can let us know, remind us of what was supposed to collapse today. I forget. I lose track. Was the government shutting down, or were we hitting the debt ceiling? Or I think it was. I thought it had something to do with the debt ceiling.
Oh, it could be a debt ceiling, and they always play the game where they can squeeze out a couple more weeks or something.
Yeah, maybe that's it. I suppose. Right, sure, why not?
Everyone seems rather calm if the government's about to shut down.
Yeah, or maybe they figure it's a good thing, or nobody's working in it anyway, or I meant that. I don't know. Yeah, that is weird. I mean, I don't know. We've just become inured to, or immune to so many of these stupid things happening that.
Well, listen, governing is boring most of the time, and this is one of those times. My understanding is that there's nothing close on any funding bills. Now, look, it's March. They have till October. They always run over anyway.
Yeah.
But no one's even. Generally, the president submits a budget that everybody declares DOA, but it sort of gives you a starting point, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, he's doing that.
Well, when?
That was up at the top of the show. I think he's set to turn some document over on Thursday, I think is what we found out.
Will it be on one page?
It may be. I think they think that's good if it's on.
How big is the emoluments budget?
That's up to you guys. It's all up to how much do you want to give them?
Well, we're giving him that hotel in Washington,
suggested donation,
which lease should be canceled. But
yes, and which all the by the way, all the microwave ovens in the rooms there are now suspect. We know
exactly,
that
and the TVs.
Right, so he's watching you. They're smart TVs. By the way, I wanted to mention, in case our friend Brian is hanging on, waiting for us to report on, he sent us two interesting stories, one of which I guess could play off of the idea of your microwave spying on you, but which is apparent. We'll have to wait until a non-snow day. Headline from the CBC is the Ottawa-based sex toy maker settles privacy lawsuit for $5 million. I'd love to read that one on the air when the kids are in school. But you thought your microwave was spying on you.
So they have spy cams in the sex toys? Wow.
They got something. It's data. It's all just metadata, right? So we don't have to worry about these things. But apparently, I guess if the metadata is about how you're using it.
We could have used that in a hotel in Moscow.
Yeah, that's right. If it didn't short out.
Exactly.
Who knows? You got to be careful with these things. By the way, Maxine Waters backed off of her accusation that she was pretty sure that even that part of the dossier was true. But I guess she walked that back, which is fine.
Yeah, well, whatever. I mean, I didn't really think about it too much. Of all the things he's done, that's the one I'll give him the most leeway on. Everybody has their weird kinks, I suppose.
I guess so.
And Trump has his. That doesn't worry me. The breaking of the Constitution and the destruction of people's health care and
all that stuff.
That stuff I would put a little higher up.
All right. Well,
but
you're
politics
entitled.
is politics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did you talk about this town hall last night that Bernie did for the umpteenth time?
No.
In Appalachia.
No, I didn't. Though I see a lot of reports of it, but yeah, zero on that, which is probably a pretty major oversight. But then again,
No, it isn't. It's
Oh.
it's the same old story, and it's a pet peeve of mine because
Okay.
I find these town halls. Let me ask you a question. You get together a group of people.
all right.
Do you expect they're going to, and they're going to be on TV, and they're not openly in the Ku Klux Klan? Do you think they're going to openly state the race issues that motivate them? I mean, do you really think you're getting honest answers on that point?
I'm not at a Bernie Sanders town hall for a number of reasons.
For a number of reasons.
Not the least of which is they
what
probably
exactly
don't show.
are we getting? I mean, what's the news value of this?
Well, I
It's
hope
just
that,
a show.
if anything, I hope that it's, if nothing else, I would hope that what comes of it is Bernie Sanders goes to Appalachia and has a town hall, and you get a televised view of non-overt racists living in Appalachia who are willing to talk about issues with a Democrat or an ostensible, near Democrat, and that's a good thing.
All right. But how many times am I going to watch that TV show? It's been on 3 times now.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but what else is he going to do?
I don't know. I mean, I guess he's getting ratings, and that's
yeah.
the important thing.
Seriously, he could be. I say that like there was an opportunity in the Senate for him to bring up some super progressive piece of legislation and have it possibly debated and passed, and there isn't. So I'm not saying that
No, there
he's
isn't. You're
skipping
right. So
out on
it doesn't
his
matter.
responsibility. He's probably doing more that way than he can do in the Senate. So
Yeah, fair enough. No harm, no foul.
Anybody can do it
at
in
the
the
worst. But I tell you, talk about the ratings. I think there's an interesting development in the ratings in the last week, and I find it's anecdotally true for me because I've actually watched a couple times. Rachel Maddow beat Fox News all last week.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I guess she goes up against O'Reilly, so she beat O'Reilly, not O'Reilly. Who does she go? Hannity, I guess she goes up against.
Oh, well, okay. That's just like watching Trump, though.
Right, but she beat him in the ratings, which doesn't happen often for MSNBC. And what's most remarkable about it is this. Now, Rachel is definitely on the left flank of the progressive movement, in my experience. But she's been doing Russia stuff now for a month. I mean, really in depth, and give her credit. She's covering it in a way that no one else is doing it, really. Now, people in certain segments have accused that the focus on Russia being some sort of McCarthyism and red baiting.
Yes.
Of course, one of those people being Donald Trump, but it's also interesting to see it in some reaches of the progressive left. I was going to say alternative left, but I know that offends people, so I'm not going to use that phrase. But you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Rachel certainly was someone that they would have considered themselves allied to. And they're really, I think it's an interesting situation where Rachel said, "Now this is a real story. It is. It just is.
Yeah.
Whether they like it or not, it is." And she's going to cover it, and not only is she covering it and getting a lot of attention, she's covering it with a lot of people praising her for what she's doing. It's an interesting dynamic in the world of progressive media, it seems to me.
It is, and it's the whole fractured landscape on the left has been interesting for some time. My nod to it all has been I still am a little bit uncomfortable just sort of saying, well, Russia, because it does have that archaic feeling to it that you're talking about Soviet communist Russians. But, the swapping evil Soviet communist Russians for totally capitalist but equally evil oligarchic Russians is not an improvement in my view.
Well, listen, in many ways, this is just more traditional realpolitik battles. Look, you've got an authoritarian leader in Putin. I don't think anybody fair denies that. They have been adventurous and aggressive. in their foreign entanglements, not just in their sphere of influence at this point, or what you might even argue is their sphere of influence. Like in 2008, Putin sent troops into South Ossetia in the Georgia Republic, and there was, a real debate about what we should do, who was in the right, who was in the wrong. It's not unlike the Crimea, which happened later with Ukraine. But of course, the Crimea problem starts after Putin's favored candidate loses in the Ukraine and loses is not the right word. He was deposed. I mean, there was a coup. Whether his election was fair or foul, he was the elected president of he was the de jure president of Ukraine, and he was deposed. And people are a little too sanguine about that from my side of the point. See, I think that people can look with balance, but Putin's reaction was way over the top. Not only did they annex the Crimea, they've invaded basically through proxies and directly the eastern Ukraine. I don't think anybody denies that either. In Syria, Russia has basically allied itself with Assad. Now, maybe we should be allied with Assad, maybe we shouldn't, but that we're not. That means Russia is adversarial to us in Syria. It's just that here you have a country where you have a very complicated relationship at best right now. And the allegation, and I think pretty well founded, is that they interfered with our elections and are trying to interfere with the elections in France and in Germany. That's troubling to anybody, right?
You would think.
Look, if people say, oh, the U.S. did it. You know what? Maybe we did it. Maybe we didn't. And when you have it, but I can tell you this, I wouldn't be saying it was okay if you told me we did it. I wouldn't say, well, the Russians did it, so it's okay.
Yeah.
I just don't get that reaction at all.
No. I don't. I get the just sort of the visceral feeling of this does feel archaic and outdated, but honestly, I don't know. Well, there seems like a number of different. Well, there's so many different fronts in the Russia story. It's hard to even tell. Like used to be. In the old days, when you used to rail about the Russians and what they were doing, you were, in fact, talking about the Russian government proper, because there wasn't anything else in Russia but the Russian government. Now, of course, Russian interference need not actually be perpetrated by the Russian government, but it's also the case that the lines are blurrier than ever as between things that are ostensibly private and actors that are ostensibly private in Russia and the Russian government, and they gleefully hand off the worst things that the Russian government itself would feel embarrassed having to defend on the world stage to quasi-governmental actors who are, supposedly private business people, but who act who remain successful business people only because they remain politically loyal to the government, Vladimir Putin. It's not unlike the Chinese situation we were talking about earlier. Is a Chinese private company in China investing in properties that people in the United States government have a personal interest in? Yes. Does that mean the Chinese government is trying to influence us? Yes and no. Yes, in that you can't exist as a private business in China without the permission of the government and those running it. And no, in the sense that, well, I named it something else. I didn't name it Chinese Government Factory. I named it Anbang Enterprises, and therefore it's A-okay. Everything's fine.
It's fascinating because this idea of a president having strong financial interest, period, is fairly new. You have to go back. I don't know who you would go back to. Certainly, Obama didn't have, very easily identifiable financial interest in a business. Previous to him, even George W. Bush had this whole we
talked about, what is it, that company that Michael Moore put into the movie?
His
it was
oil?
one of those investment companies that had some defense interests. I don't even remember.
Carlyle?
Carlyle Group. You know, the direct connection to George W. Bush and Carlyle was pretty tenuous. But even then, you see what I'm saying? That, look, the Carlyle Group, and then Halliburton. Well, Cheney was the CEO of Halliburton, so there was something to be said there. But he wasn't owner of Halliburton at the time.
Right.
Bill Clinton didn't have anything. I mean, he got investigated for a failed land deal. That's how unconnected he was. They couldn't even get an actual company to point to with him. H.W. Bush, I guess you could argue the Carlyle Group. Reagan, for all he had a house, but he didn't own a company.
Right.
Obviously
nobody ever did really nobody, served in office with it because of the emoluments clause. It would just have been too much of a complication.
Exactly right. Now, listen, in foreign countries, it's just not an unheard of thing that, Berlusconi was, I guess, sort of unprecedented for Italy, but, in other countries, the president owns stuff.
Yes. People are
going to get mad when I say this, but let me go ahead and disclaim Kagro in the Morning and David and Daily Kos on this. One of the things that the president of Mexico did was become a billionaire. That was part of the job at the end of the year. Here's your going away present. You stole all this money. Here's $1 billion. I mean, that was the reality of how they did it, which wasn't right. But we didn't have that. We did not have that before in the United States that I know of. If we did, they'd certainly hid it from me.
No. Well, I don't think so. I know Trump is introducing that model that they've used so successfully in Russia, in China, and we've talked about it in certain ways in Saudi Arabia, and when we discuss the weird differences, what are weird differences to us, based on our previous understanding of how the United States government worked, and not everybody works that way, but there are alternative models, and we forget that. Some of them good, some of them bad, some of them prone to corruption. We tend to think ours has normally pretty good protections against corruption. I guess we're finding out that it doesn't. And maybe
the president of the United States was rarely corrupted by money.
Direct personal interests and personal holdings. Yes.
I think that's even Richard Nixon. Say what you want about Nixon. His corruption was a power issue. It wasn't, I'm stealing a lot of money. Would you agree with that?
I think so.
He may have had illegal campaign contributions, but what did he use them for? To play dirty tricks on McGovern.
Yeah, as opposed to, golf clubs and cars.
It's truly a different ethos. I think there's something that about Trump that's just not recognized enough, and we're not equipped to deal with the type of corruption that he and his family are basically practicing every day.
No, it's new to us in this country, but then I don't know. I wonder whether we've become familiar with it in watching other countries do these things and say, they've been looting their countries for a long time. Why aren't we looting ours? That's an odd.
Yeah, I guess that's one lesson to be learned. You say, well, look at the models.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at that, how they do it. Okay. Well, I don't like how
moved us to the Putin model, and and if you don't think it's about Putin, well, or you don't want to talk about Russia, talk about China, or talk about Saudi Arabia, where the lines between what the government is and does and the personal interests of the people running the government are very, very unclear.
Yeah, that is really unique and unprecedented, at least in the modern era. I can't go back and see if, in the mid-1800s, some president was giving his company sweetheart deals or something like that. I don't know. But in the modern era, and I would take that back to, Herbert Hoover didn't pay himself off. He wasn't giving his construction company work. That's the only sort of businessman that we had before Trump, right?
I guess.
Eisenhower was a general. He didn't have any businesses to
as
favor.
far as relatively successful businesses go, Harry Truman was a failed businessman like Donald Trump, but spectacularly more of a failed guy. I guess he was quite bankrupt in the traditional sense, as opposed to Donald Trump.
Truman was destitute after leaving office and led to the creation of the presidential pension. Now, of course, the reality is presidents now, like the President Obama and his wife, are going to make a lot of money after they leave office. And believe it or not, it's not because of any favors they gave. The President of the United States is the most famous person in the world. Mm-hmm. People want to be next to that person. Not just when they're president, but for the most part when they're ex-president.
Yeah.
That's just the reality. I mean, people, we talk about the dirty money in politics. I think the presidency should be, it generally is, the hardest office holder to buy. The price is generally too high. Little did we know that the price would be pushed up by letting the crook himself become president, so he could basically do the stealing on his own behalf. That is new. It's not bribery anymore. I'm just taking it because I'm the president.
Yeah, you're not going to get anything out of me by sending me your money. I'm just going to steal it directly.
I'm going to steal it directly. You forget about bribing me. I'm just going to steal it myself. I'm going to take this hotel lease, and I'm going to take all your fees and expenses and make you spend them at my club in Palm Beach.
Right.
And I'm going to make you protect my wife at Trump Tower for $30 million a month. And, by the way, my son-in-law is going to get a sweetheart deal from China. And I'm going to get my trademarks approved. And that's the way it's going to go.
Yeah.
Think about this stupid thing. Who's keeping track of how Trump is paying for the foreign visitors to Trump International?
Nobody. That's something that he said when he hosted the Japanese prime minister. He kind of waved off those issues by saying, I'm covering that cost. That's me giving him a personal gift of some kind, which I guess isn't illegal in Japan, or if it is,
wait a second, you mean the Mar-a-Lago trip?
Yeah. Oh, is there something different?
But who gave him all the Secret Service protection and payment and all the rental rooms that had to be done by the government?
Right. Well, me.
Well,
I personally.
We did,
that.
not him. If he had paid that himself, fine. If he wants to pay for government trips to Mar-a-Lago and all that entails, the expense that entails out of his own pocket, more power to him.
That would be great.
He's not doing that.
No. I was. That's a different issue entirely. No, he's always intended to live. The big attraction of becoming president to him, I think, certainly wasn't getting anything done. I doubt very much whether that's the case, was that he could maintain his lifestyle and even improve his lifestyle at zero cost to himself.
Oh, he's done that.
Yeah.
Then he was right so far.
So far.
Now, of course, he's going to get blamed for not doing stuff presidents are supposed to do. I think. I mean, I think that's happening. The funny thing is, here's the weirdest thing. Tell me where we would be if Trump had put away his Twitter account when he became president.
What?
Where do you think we'd be? The media would be like normalizing him, don't you think?
Oh, yes, largely. I mean, they are anyway. So
I know, but the Twitter account made it harder for them.
They do. That does excite them. Yes.
If he had not used Twitter, wouldn't he have been better off? He did us a favor by staying on Twitter.
Yeah, all of his biggest and most inflammatory mistakes have been unfiltered Twitter remarks. I guess he could try and make them elsewhere, but this is just too easy. And I don't know that he would get TV time to get on. I mean, he could claim TV time for some other purpose and then just change the subject, as he frequently does. But at some point,
that's what he does.
Say,
but
can't do this anymore.
I'm just saying, it just has staying power. It's his own words. They can't deny he said it. It's his Twitter account.
Yeah. Well, they do deny things anyway.
And I think that's hurt him in the normalization game. I think that That's why I always found it remarkable, all the erstwhile intelligent people saying his Twitter account was a distraction. He's just distracting us from. It's like, no.
Oh, well.
He's destroying himself with this. If he didn't tweet, he'd be in a much stronger political position.
Yes, that seems to be the case. Yesterday's hostile exchange with Spicer and the press in the daily briefing, it centered around coming back to the president's tweeted communications and saying, he said this, and now you're saying, oh, no, he didn't mean that. By saying, yesterday's specific example was Spicer saying, he didn't really mean wiretapped when he said wiretapped. Oh, but he did, and he doubled down a few days later, too. I know, but we're saying he didn't mean that.
Well, what do they mean then? What did he mean? If
General surveillance of some kind, which is also, is still a tremendous charge.
How does that make it better? He's basically accused Obama of ordering surveillance of Trump.
Yes.
He ordered these Secret Service agents to follow me around. Is that what he means?
No one knows. All we know is that Spicer kept insisting. He didn't mean wiretapping. You keep coming back to this word wiretapping, and he didn't mean that.
Since I ran for president, all these men started following me around at Obama's order. Is that his allegation?
Well, look, I'm not Inspector Gadget.
Because, Ben Carson could do the same allegation, except he asked for those men to follow him around.
Oh. Well, yeah, I have no idea exactly what they think they're talking about, but I'm certain that if he were not tweeting, there would be less to latch onto. But that's also the next biggest pastime in America, and maybe just progressive and liberal America, is scolding one another for following the wrong story.
Yeah, well, I know.
Who can tell anymore? I think you're going to have to try and follow all of them. And some people are into one and others are into another. And just take a better sampling. Dip into the rivers of many people in Twitter and monitor the stories. I don't know why you would have to read about one and not the other.
I think following his Twitter account is vital to understanding, to me, the most important story that we have right now.
And
it is this. Donald Trump is insane.
Oh,
he's not mentally well. That's the truth. I really believe that.
I do. I know a lot of people do.
I think there is a very good argument that the 25th Amendment should be invoked on this person.
Yes. On what grounds it will happen and what it's going to take, I don't know.
Well.
Yes, but I know that, and I think they know that too. They're just not saying it yet. I'm wondering what might move them to say so. I'm not certain that there's anything on the horizon that does that.
But my point is that following his Twitter account isn't a distraction. It's covering one of the most important stories of our lifetime, that the President of the United States is mentally unfit. It manifests itself most clearly on his Twitter account.
Yes, and suppose that's a point we should be making, is that, and I guess you could probably convince some people who say that it's a distraction of that too, by saying because they probably mean any particular thing that he tweets about is a distraction, and that may or may not be true. I have a difficult time, myself either distinguishing between distractions or believing that one or another is. But yeah, you make a good point that you could say, well, it's not so much that today he's tweeting about surveillance and the next day he's tweeting about Nordstrom's. It's that only a nut would do that as president.
Absolutely. I don't think I literally am not kidding, and I'm not being political. I do not think he is mentally well.
No. I'll agree with that. We'll
I think he's a bad person. I think he's an incompetent person. I think he's racist and sexist and all the other things everybody says. But to me, primordially, he's mentally unbalanced.
I would agree.
Okay.
I just need to move the rest of the cabinet to that position. He needs to do something, and it doesn't have to be done the same way, but there has to be some triggering event that is irreconcilable with the
when he
power
says
politics
nuke somebody, you think they'll stop him? That's just what worries me. He has a bad. He's not going to nuke him. But let's say he says, "I'm going to bomb. I'm going to bomb somebody."
Yeah, the somebody is the important part.
And it's a crazy thing to do.
All right.
Somebody going to say
Australia. No.
Yeah, Australia.
Okay, that would be bad. to the great relief of our Australian fans. That would be bad. And we have almost nobody listening in North Korea, and that would not work. That would have.
But North Korea, unfortunately, crazy. What's crazy and not crazy there is going to be harder to argue. So I was thinking of something more.
Yes.
Well, literally, I mean,
you're right.
They're shooting missiles at Japan.
Yes. No, there are definitely. Look, I think we all know that there's a short list of countries that if the president said he was going to bomb in any way, a significant portion of the population would say good outright. The rest would say, well, it's sad that we have to, but we have to. Others who would say this is insane no matter how you slice it. The president,
or it's just wrong. It's bad policy. Yeah. We shouldn't do it this way.
Right. Certainly true. But what would it take to get the cabinet to sign a letter saying he's mentally unbalanced? It would have to be something out of the blue, like an ally. But,
yes.
But there are allies that, I don't know, at a certain point, you probably could have pulled that off bombing France in 2003. Yeah, old Europe, they're getting in our way. Pacifists, they're not letting us overfly their territory on the way to Iraq. We should bomb it. That might have worked. Right now, no. But,
right. Let's take a scenario. Russia invades the Baltic states, which I don't think is on the horizon, but suppose it was.
Okay.
And as opposed to bombing, Trump says, fine, no problem. That's sort of a reverse situation. So, well, he's not going to war.
Yeah.
Or he's not going to defend them, even though there's NATO treaty obligations.
Right. Would that do it? Do I think that would do it? I don't.
Yeah, what do you think? I don't either. I don't either. I think invading Germany wouldn't necessarily do it with these people. He's not going to invade Germany. Putin's not that dumb. Putin's not crazy.
You're not
Putin's
giving him
just pushing
suggestions.
our buttons.
That's true. But yeah, but he probably does evaluate from time to time. Maybe just for small talk, right? End of what amounts to a cabinet meeting for Putin. He may say, off the record, guys, just for fun, what do you think is the biggest or most important Western country we could just outright invade without them doing anything over in the United States? And it's like a parlor game. Germany. Oh, come on. Defend that.
Are you kidding me? We'd have to do something with
Germany. Estonia, definitely.
Poland?
That's not even big. Are you kidding?
He'd reinvade all the old Soviet republics.
I guess.
To the degree that he has to.
Yeah.
Ukraine
could go ahead and
something.
Do all that.
Okay, I'm taking all of Ukraine.
We'd say, it's all Russian anyway.
Right. That's not completely crazy. They'll at least take half of Ukraine. So half Russia.
Although, here's the counter argument, right? If you're trying to get me to sign the letter, and let's say I'm, I don't know, Nikki Haley. and I don't know. I am the UN ambassador, and I should definitely be stronger on that stuff.
But she said, by the way, why? How am I the UN ambassador again?
How did I get here? I was going to say, as a counter argument, you might say, let me ask you this. What do you think we would have done under Obama if the Russians had said, that's it, Estonia is Russian again? Oh, that's a good question. I don't know that we would have done.
I don't know what we would have done.
Considerably more about that.
Tough questions, and the last guy I want answering them is named Donald J. Trump.
Yes, well, that's true. Although I guess the answer would have been economic sanctions, and we have our answer there. Obama would have said strong economic sanctions, and everyone would have laughed at how strong they were. But on the other hand, fine, that's great, and we all understand that that's maybe the most stringent reaction that there could be. But what does it mean that Donald Trump says not only no sanctions, but maybe more business for them? Maybe we'll buy more Russian steel for the pipeline.
Do that if you give me, if you buy this piece of parcel that I have over here for $500 million.
Yeah, or we're buying Russian steel to build pipelines in which he's invested.
Yeah, I don't understand that Russian steel story. Someday someone can explain it to me. How he keeps tweeting out "Buy American" except on K and the Keystone Pipeline, which could be Russian steel.
No, there's nothing. I guess, like I was saying yesterday with the donation of the salary story. The way you know that Donald Trump isn't going to donate his salary is because he said he was going to donate his salary. That's how you know. How do you know we're not going to buy American steel for something? Because Donald Trump said we should buy American steel for it. And then he won't. I can't get past the one I'm stuck on, which is nothing compared to anything else. I mean, the Russian steel story, that he would stand on the rostrum in the House of Representatives giving his non-State of the Union address. The State of the Union, which it wasn't. Okay, fine. Standing there and saying, and from now on, these projects like these pipelines that we have approved are going to be built with American steel. And everybody cheers, and then he walks away and says, P.S., not this one.
It was amazing.
Another one. What other one? That's the most famous one there is. And we're building two of them, and not that one either then. Oh, okay. They're all exempt. All the future ones, except for the ones that I exempt later. I'm going to donate my salary.
How about the wall? Is it going to be made with Russian steel, too?
Yeah, sure. Maybe. I don't know. But, yeah, I mean, this is the constant thing. That and, I don't know. I mean, just whatever it's really pretty amazing. I'm going to donate my salary. No, I'm not. I'm going to do it later. I'm going to donate $1 million to the veterans. No, I'm not. I'm going to do it later. And then look how much he had to sweat that during the campaign to come up with the money he said he was going to donate, and then he didn't, and he took other people's money, and it was documented, and we all just thought, well, he won't win, so whatever. And now he's governing that way too. It's all going to be American steel, except it's not. I'm going to donate my salary, but it's not.
Except in the big project you announced in the same speech.
Yeah.
The Keystone Project, it isn't.
I'm gonna divest from my businesses, but I won't. And that's spreading, by the way. There are now other cabinet members who are saying, well, I'm going to divest myself too, except for I think Sonny Perdue,
just like the president,
said,
doing it the way the president's
right.
doing.
I'm going to divest the same way. Kushner was the first one to say, I'm going to divest myself the same way by selling some things or transferring control of other things and keeping the rest of it. I think it was Sonny Perdue was the latest one who's still up for agriculture secretary, who says, I'm going to divest myself of some things, but I'm keeping my real estate because that seems to be okay with people.
It turns out being a real estate mogul broker, getting that real estate tax deduction is A-okay.
Right. And so now if you need a deal that the Department of Agriculture approves, stay at Sonny Perdue's hotel or whatever it is he's doing. Buy a suite in the medical office building he's invested in. I don't know what he's into. But, yeah, the number of times where the president that also part of the exchange yesterday with Spicer. I forget who it was who was doing the interviewing or the questioning. It was the NBC's White House reporter, whose name escapes me. Is Peter Alexander? Is that the name?
Yeah,
you
Peter
know those
Alexander.
things better than I do. And he had this tense exchange. It still never gets right down to brass tacks, and says your guy is full of it. But he's still asking when do we trust the president on anything?
They got to play by certain etiquettes. I said he's even this big fight about the lie word in the headline. Say the president falsely stated today. I can live with that. Falsely stated.
Yes, we have that.
Just say falsely stated. I don't need the big argument about lying or not lying.
Well,
but if he's saying something false and the same thing, again, falsely stated today that there were 3 million illegal votes.
I think people do understand that. That's true.
So why get caught up? That I think, the L word or not the L word,
okay.
I understand why people get upset with it because they're clearly lies. But, if you need to play the etiquette game, at least say he's not telling the truth.
Yes. Well, we still have work to do in other areas. I think the big issue yesterday also for the press was trying to decide what words to use about Steve King. They were all writing, he
racist.
said something which seemed to be racially controversial or something.
Well, what's weird about it is the guy who King is talking about, this Wilders, is there's not a newspaper in the United States that would hesitate to call him a racist. Why Steve King gets better treatment than Wilders is what I'd like to know.
Oh, who knows? Perhaps no answer to that one. Let's see.
I mean, I do think that it's an interesting prejudice that they have. It's sort of a nationalistic prejudice.
Oh, yes, I guess that could be
that
true.
we can't call Americans certain things, but we can call foreigners those things.
Oh, well, okay. That's probably true.
No, it is true. It
yes.
absolutely is true. I mean, they would have no hesitation calling Nigel Farage a white nationalist.
I guess not. I haven't tracked
Trump
that.
embraces Nigel Farage. He says he and I think exactly the same way.
Yeah.
But I can't call Donald Trump a white nationalist?
Can you?
I mean, they can. I can. You know what I mean? The media.
Right. That's true. Although I even have questions about what that is supposed to mean. I don't know. White nationalism.
No, I agree. White supremacist, really. A racialist. Or now they're using the word eugenics, which I think is maybe accurate, but it sort of blunts it. I mean, white supremacist. White supremacist is a good phrase.
I guess so. I don't expect to see it anytime soon in relation to them, but all right. Well, as it turns out,
listen, you're going to wrap up 4 minutes. Let me let you wrap up your show. Thanks for letting me invent after a week and a half or so of not being able to invent.
Okay. Appreciate it. Stay warm down there and don't come back up here until the snow's gone.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Okay. Talk
Terrific.
to you later.
All right. Thanks
Bye-bye.
again, Armando. All right. Well, let's see. There wasn't, I don't know, the day was slow on the news front. There are a number of things that we still will catch up on later in the week that can be good background material. We'll have Joan McCarter with us hopefully tomorrow for her Wednesday visit. Plus, of course, Greg Dworkin back with us, and we'll figure out what it was. Man, I feel bad that I can't bring that to mind. But I have a feeling that it was about the debt ceiling rather than anything else, because we were talking about that. But I literally don't see anything in the news, including any suggestion that any solution has been proposed. And I assume that at this point, it was always the case, as Armando said, that they could always come up with more wiggle room just by leaning on the Secretary of the Treasury. And I assume that's even more the case these days. I don't think that there's anything that Steven Mnuchin wouldn't manipulate if Donald Trump asked for it. And I don't know that it's any more or less legitimate than it was when President Obama was asking his Treasury secretaries to cook the books somewhat to keep things floating so that we didn't default. So I guess we can give him as much leeway too. All right. So a little bit of a show about nothing today, but that's what happens on these snow days and these slow days. We'll pass the torch now to the guys on the after show, Wink and Justice, who will round things up because they actually paid attention to what happened and read the headlines. What's up today? The New York Attorney General says Rex Tillerson used a sock puppet while at ExxonMobil to discuss climate change online. That was one of the big stories. I do have that put aside, but let's let Wink and Justice get a hold of that one and tell you what that's all about. So I guess you could call that another email or online communications problem. What a way to spend your time if you're the CEO of ExxonMobil. I hope it was a high-level bulletin board. Anyway, what else have we got here? Nashville cops still use a 3-decade-old training manual that warns recruits that communities of color and kids who spend too much time in daycare are an inherent danger. And Senators Chuck Grassley and Debbie Stabenow introduced a bill that would require a safety review when U.S. food and agriculture firms are sold to or merged with foreign companies. Sounds like a pretty reasonable idea, or at least a germ of a good thought. They'll discuss that and more, and talk on the last half with Chris Reeves for an update from Kansas, Missouri, and the Midwest.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Thank you for listening today and bearing with us on this unusual day. I hope you didn't get hit too hard by the snow. I saw, if you were following along with Greg, up in Connecticut, lots of birds at the bird feeder. That should keep you people happy. Keep your blood pressure down. That's not a bad thing. We'll be back tomorrow with Joan and Greg to raise it again.